the husband I had loved for 11 years said to me, "Let's get a divorce. I want to give her a proper status." The next day, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. From that day on, he never came home again. All I saw were endless updates of them together, shared on his social media. As for me, I gave up helping with his company in every way, just to see how far he could go on his own. Main story: the sky was a clear blue, the sun shone warmly, and the breeze was gentle. Mason and I walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau together. When the breeze tousled my hair, he instinctively raised his hand to tidy it for me. Seeing this scene, the staff at the marriage registration desk invited us to take a seat. "Sorry, we're here to file for divorce." Hearing my words, the staff widened their eyes, exchanging glances in surprise. Led into a separate office, the clerk asked about the reason for our divorce. Mason pressed his lips together, staying silent. I kindly answered for him. Emotional breakdown, personality incompatibility. Though I said that, everyone knew it was just a polite excuse. The real reason was that Mason had someone else he wanted to protect with all his heart. The girl worked at a cafe below his office building. He drove her to and from work, stayed by her bedside when she was ill, and during the campus festival, in front of everyone, he gave her luxury brand clothing, presented her with a giant bouquet, and even admitted that the sponsorship of the event was just because his little girlfriend had a performance. He practically turned me into her background character while he played her guardian angel. As for why I agreed to the divorce, the reason was simple. I don't use other people's leftovers. Looking at our slightly faded marriage certificate, the staff, as usual, advised us not to act rashly and to remember the days we had once shared. "I'm busy. Please hurry up." His cold words sped up the process considerably. About half an hour later, Mason and I each received a receipt for the divorce cooling-off period. He pressed his lips tightly. "Daisy, where are you going?" "I'll drive you." Before I could refuse, he strode to the parking lot and pulled the car up in front of me. I lifted my hand, instinctively reaching for the passenger seat door. Then it hit me, we were no longer husband and wife. Facing his complicated gaze, I calmly sat in the back seat instead. The car merged smoothly into traffic, moving forward, even from the back. I could see through the rearview mirror that Mason was in quite a good mood. "Could you please turn the temperature up? I have pollen allergies, and the cold makes it worse." He silently handed me a packet of tissues. But Mason and I had grown up together. Childhood sweethearts. After 4 years of dating and 7 years of marriage, he knew perfectly well I never had pollen allergies. "Daisy, sir, please call me MS. Sue." "All right, MS. Sue. I'll be the one to tell both sets of parents about our divorce." Mason had always liked to take full control of everything related to me. This time was no exception, but he hadn't been like that as a child. Back then, Mason was tiny, skinny, shy, and timid. In kindergarten, he was always bullied. Meanwhile, I was outgoing and, with my fiery sense of justice, something of a little troublemaker. Since his mother always gave me delicious snacks, I felt obliged to look after him. I remember climbing onto the kindergarten's broadcast platform with my little short legs and announcing to the entire school, "Mason is under my protection." Only then did Mason make it through those years safely, slowly growing into the school heartthrob in middle and high school. Although I was a girl, I always treated Mason as if he were my sworn brother. But he pestered me every day to tutor him in math, insisting that I had to go to the same university with him. In the end, I really did as he wished and enrolled in the same school. He became the heartthrob of University A, and also turned into the biggest obstacle in my love life. With him around, no matter how beautiful or cheerful I was, no matter how many friends I had, not a single boy dared to approach me, let alone confess his feelings, throughout those 4 years. On graduation day, Mason took me to the university's Science and Technology Hall. Thanks to his student council friends, all the lights in the building were turned off, leaving only the vast, dazzling starry sky display lit up just for me. He held my hand, and I could feel the sweat in his palm. "Daisy, will you marry me? I swear on my life, I will treat you well for the rest of my days." At that time, I didn't hesitate at all. But today, facing Mason, I rejected him without a second thought. "Mr. Mason, That's my business. Please don't trouble yourself, I'll handle it. My overly polite and distant tone made Mason frown unconsciously. After a moment of silence in the car, he asked with a half-smile how I planned to explain things to our parents. When I stayed quiet, Mason let out a mocking laugh. Daisy, don't tell me you're regretting this. Only then did I finally lift my gaze from my phone to look at him. Could you focus on driving? Please don't get distracted. As for the explanation, like I said, I'll deal with it myself. The last thing I wanted was to die in a car accident with my ex-husband on my first day of being single. Hearing my blatant indifference, his grip on the steering wheel tightened more and more. Suddenly, music filled the car. It was Mason's phone, connected to the Bluetooth. The ringtone was a sugary love song adored by young girls these days. Without caring that I was still in the car, Mason answered the call. A soft, sweet female voice filled the cabin. She pouted playfully, saying she'd had classes all day, still had to work a shift at the cafe that evening, and was so hungry she could faint. Mason glanced at me, seeing my face unchanged. He chuckled and said to her, "You poor thing. You must be starving. I'll go buy you your favorite seafood porridge and crab buns right now, okay?" The two of them cooed at each other until the call ended. Without needing him to say anything, I pointed at the intersection ahead. "Just let me out at the corner." The black car pulled over. The moment I stepped out, I hurried away as if I couldn't wait to escape. Only after the car drove out of sight did I clutch my stomach, drenched in cold sweat, nearly collapsing on the sidewalk. 2 months ago, Mason had called to say he'd forgotten an important document. I grabbed it and drove toward his office. On the way, a speeding truck overturned while braking, crashing into my car. I survived by sheer luck, but my left leg was shattered by the force. In agony and terrified of permanent damage, I called Mason countless times through my tears, but his phone was turned off the whole time. Later, I learned the truth, because that girl had once mentioned she'd never seen pigeons in France. Mason had immediately bought tickets to Paris. He spent an entire week vacationing with her there, fearing my parents would worry. I never told them about the accident. It was my best friend Rosie who accompanied me through the surgery and rehabilitation. At that moment, I made my decision. This utterly useless man was no longer part of my life. Returning home alone, I made myself a simple lunch. I had just finished eating and was cleaning up when Rosie's message popped up. "Daisy, you're not even officially divorced yet, and Mason is already shamelessly flaunting his affair in public." She attached a photo of Mason and that young woman dining at a couple's restaurant. It was the very same restaurant I had once suggested to Mason, only to be brushed off because he was too busy. Suddenly, a wave of nausea surged up my throat. In that instant, a thought struck me like lightning. The next morning, I went to the hospital early. Looking at my blood test report, the doctor said to me, "Congratulations, Ms. Sue. Based on the results, you're 13 weeks pregnant, 3 months along." I fell silent for a while. "Please schedule me for surgery." In the first few years of our marriage, Mason practically clung to me every single day. We wanted nothing more than to have a child. Yet after all these years, even though there were no health problems on either side, we never conceived. And now, after our divorce, the baby suddenly arrived. Well then, bad timing. It was just the baby's misfortune to show up now. As I stepped out of the consultation room, I suddenly saw Mason and his little darling Iris standing at the door. My hand tightened sharply around my bag. Could it be, before our divorce was even finalized, Iris was already pregnant? The moment Iris saw me, her first instinct was to hide behind Mason, as if I'd end her life with one step. And when Mason noticed the fury written all over my face, he surely thought I had followed them here. "What are you doing here?" Before I could reply, he continued without pause. "Daisy, let's separate peacefully. Iris isn't in good health. If you stalk me like this, you'll only scare her." Hearing those words, I knew my suspicion was correct. "Open your eyes. I was here first. And besides, this is the OBGYN department. Don't tell me your little girlfriend is pregnant." "Mason, don't forget, we're not divorced yet." With that, I turned to leave, but just then, someone called my name from behind. I looked back to see a handsome man in a white coat walking straight toward me. Mason's eyes instantly grew colder. "Who is he? How do you know each other?" The man ignored Mason's interrogation entirely. He came right up to me, concerned about my injuries, asking how my rehabilitation was going. I smiled faintly. Thanks to Dr. Bye. I can basically walk normally now. Suddenly, Mason stepped forward, grabbing my shoulders. Rehabilitation? Didn't you just have a minor scrape? Why would you need rehab? Mason had only heard from his secretary that I'd been injured, and assumed it was nothing serious. He had never once considered that I might have been gravely hurt. If he had cared enough to notice how long I stayed in the hospital, or simply observed how I walked, he would have realized my injuries were far from minor. But ever since my accident, he had either been buried in work or spending sweet, intimate time with Iris. He had no energy left to notice me. My leg has nothing to do with you, I said coldly. Don't forget, we're already divorcing. At that, Mason's face darkened visibly, and right then, Iris inexplicably began crying and pleading with me. She sobbed pitifully, making it seem as if I were the aggressive mistress. Daisy, sister, I've always wanted to apologize to you. I've always told Mason to cherish you, to treat you well. Everything turning out like this is all my fault. No matter if you want to hit me, scold me, or do whatever you want to me, I'll accept it. Facing Iris's fake contrition, I remained calm and indifferent. First of all, I'm an only child. Second, this isn't a movie set, no matter how good your acting is. The only person you can fool is Mason. And third, frankly, your acting isn't even that good. Seeing that I didn't react, didn't rush at her the way she expected, Iris stiffened slightly, then quickly covered her belly and looked at Mason with utter grievance. His eyes softened with unbearable pity. He slowly pulled Iris into his arms, wiped away her tears, and turned to lecture me as if it were his duty. Daisy, there are 29 days left in the divorce cooling-off period. You know my temper. Don't stir up trouble. If things really turn ugly, the one who'll end up humiliated will only be you. After Mason led Iris away, Dr. Bye walked up to me. Daisy, are you all right? People are like this. When you face everything alone, you feel nothing. But the moment someone shows concern, you can't help but feel overwhelmed with grievance. Exhaustion written all over my face. I looked at Dr. Bye. Can I ask you for a favor? Before I could even say what it was, Dr. Bye had already agreed. With his help, I successfully underwent the abortion that very day. As I was wheeled out of the operating room, I thought I glimpsed a familiar figure, but I was too weak to think much about it and didn't pay attention. After the surgery, Mason never received another word from me, no calls, no texts. For all the times I had once clung to him, now I was just as silent. A week later, Mason returned to our home reeking of alcohol, with Iris clinging to him from the front door to the bedroom. He kissed her passionately, only to find me in the walk-in closet changing clothes. After finishing, I stepped out and walked past them. Excuse me, I need to head out. The air froze instantly. Mason instinctively loosened his hold on Iris and then, lowering his voice, whispered to his little darling, Iris, go outside first. She shot me a glare before obediently leaving the bedroom. With her seductive charm lingering in the air, Mason silently moved behind me while I was choosing a bag. His arms suddenly stretched forward, trapping me between the wardrobe and him. Daisy, dress like this at night, you're not off to meet some random guy, are you? Who would have thought a woman I discarded could still be so popular? Like this? Like that? A blouse and a short skirt, clothes you see everywhere on the street. But in his mouth, it became something dirty. And a discarded shoe? Truly, what a lowlife. When had this man become so shameless? How had I never noticed before? I tried pushing him away, he didn't budge, so I used my hands. I slapped him across the face. Hard. Like this? A discarded shoe? That's your so-called character? Don't forget, even though we're in the divorce cooling-off period, I can still change my mind. If that happens, don't blame me for making your precious darling a mistress for life. Taking advantage of his stunned silence, I shoved him aside and strode out of the closet. In the living room, I unfortunately ran into Iris sipping from a glass of water. Daisy, sister, you look so beautiful. Are you going on a date? I didn't expect you to move on so quickly. She trailed off, deliberately vague. Mason clenched his jaw, clearly about to spew more garbage to humiliate me. I grabbed the water glass from Iris's hand and splashed the lukewarm water in her face. Keep running your mouth, and next time it won't just be rinsing it clean. At that moment, my phone rang with a refreshed smile. I answered while walking straight to the door, watching me leave with such light steps. Mason's face darkened as he followed, but then he saw me get into a silver sedan and drive off without looking back, leaving him only exhaust fumes. Daisy, have you really made up your mind? The man in the driver's seat spoke, his face stern, his eyes shadowed with deep, undeniable concern. You know me. Once I've decided something, I never change. Claude, do you want to help me? I looked at Claude, my gaze fixed on him, unwavering. He lowered his head with a soft laugh, then gripped the steering wheel unconsciously. Eyes set on the road ahead. His voice was gentle, yet firm. You know, Daisy, I've never refused you anything. I'll help you. The car stopped in front of a bar. I stepped out, pushed the door open, and walked inside. The private room was already lively, filled with chatter before I even arrived. Daisy, why are you so late? We've all been waiting forever. Exactly. You were the one who called for this gathering, yet you're the last to show up. Penalty drink. I entered with ease, sat down naturally, and agreed to the forfeit without hesitation. These people were my capital, my network. They were also the reason Mason's company had managed to grow. This room was filled with friends I had maintained over the years. Some I'd known since middle or high school. Others I'd met later, when Mason first started his business in college. But there was one thing in common, without exception. They were all Mason's clients, his financial backers. The ones holding the purse strings. Some were past partners, others current ones. Even if they were only past collaborators, their names still carried weight in the industry, people Mason couldn't afford to offend. When the atmosphere settled, I finally voiced the reason I had called them together. Mason and I are divorced. The room instantly fell silent, leaving only the background music playing. Fittingly, the song had just reached the line, "Once upon a time, there was someone who loved you for a long, long time." Someone rushed to turn it off. How is that possible? You two dated for so many years, and were married for SE. Clearly, they remembered the phrase 7-year itch. I said casually, without a care. He cheated. Last week, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau. His little bird is pregnant. The room erupted, filled with curses and words of indignation on my behalf. But I didn't care anymore. All I wanted now was to see him stripped back to the man he would have been without me. This wasn't revenge. Not really, it was curiosity. I wanted to see whether, without my help from the very beginning, he would still be so successful, or just another mediocre failure. I was eager to find out. In the past, his company relied on all of your support. From now on, stop. Cut it all off. Of course, they agreed without hesitation. After all, their help had only ever been for my sake. Back when Mason was a junior in college, he and his roommates had made a small game just for fun. Unexpectedly, a gaming company noticed it. At the time, they were too proud. The offer from that company didn't meet their expectations, so they decided to start their own company and develop gaming software. In the beginning, those first few months, they put all their energy into the game itself, believing the company was steadily moving forward. Everything seemed smooth, but once the game was nearly finished, problems came one after another. To make a profit, they needed marketing, and they needed to get the game listed on platforms. That required professional negotiations with various companies. But Mason and his friends were all typical engineering geeks. Asking them to negotiate with clients was like asking for their lives. During that time, Mason wore a frown every day. Even though he tried his best to hide his emotions from me, I could still clearly see his restlessness and anxiety. I couldn't stand to watch him worry himself sick day after day. So I told him, just focus on developing the game. I'll take care of the rest. At first, Mason refused. He thought he could handle it all himself. He even comforted me, saying he'd figure everything out and I should just wait to marry him after graduation and live as a rich wife. I didn't argue, just let him talk. But as the company kept spending without earning anything, his anxiety only grew, until one day, he came to me himself, asking me to help him negotiate with other companies about getting the game launched. I agreed gladly. In fact, even back when I first talked with him about it, I had already begun researching companies that might collaborate with his. With my outgoing personality and the network I'd built across various industries, Mason's game quickly launched on multiple platforms. From then on, his company soared. And soon, in the second year after graduation, which was also our first year of marriage, he had earned the title of Rising Star of the Internet. And from that point forward, I took charge of all his external relations, media, trending topics on Weibo, negotiations with clients. All of it was handled by me behind the scenes. After I secured his very first business deal, Mason gave me 1/6 of the company's shares. Now, the first thing I needed to do was sell those shares before my friends started pulling their support, otherwise, they'd quickly lose value. The very night word got out that I was selling, I received a call from Mason. His furious roar thundered through the phone, as if I had committed some heinous crime. "Daisy, who gave you the nerve to sell your shares without telling me? How dare you?" I idly toyed with my manicured nails and replied carelessly, "You and I are done. Why would I still involve myself in your company?" Mason was so angry he was incoherent, but he had no real counter. After a long silence, his tone softened. "If you insist on selling, I won't stop you. Name your price. Sell them to me." "Well, President Joe, how generous of you. I won't ask for much. Let's go with market value. But that's just for the shares. As for marital property, it's as agreed, 60% for me, 40% for you." At my words, Mason paused for 2 whole seconds. "I don't have that much cash on hand. How about this? Transfer the shares to me, and all of our marital assets will be yours." I froze for a moment, then quickly calculated the rough figures in my mind. "No, your 40% isn't enough to cover the value of my shares. Besides, you've spent plenty on that little bird of yours, haven't you? I have every right to reclaim that. Daisy, don't push me too far. Know when to stop." He gritted the words between his teeth, but I was unafraid. "I suggest you come up with a better offer. Otherwise, I'll sell to someone else." "Fine. In addition to all our marital assets, I'll give you the 3 luxury apartments I bought downtown before our marriage. Is that enough?" At that, I smiled faintly. "Much obliged, President Joe. Tomorrow I'll come to your office to sign the contract." 2 weeks later, early one morning, I returned home and opened the door. The moment I stepped inside, I saw a man sitting on the sofa. Instinctively, I jumped in surprise. It was Mason. He must not have slept all night. His white shirt was rumpled, his eyes deep and unreadable. Mason gnashed his teeth and roared at me, "Daisy, what did you do to Iris this time?" The moment he opened his mouth, his voice was hoarse and grating. Even he himself seemed startled by how it sounded. "What did I do? And even if I did anything, it has nothing to do with you anymore, does it?" I replied indifferently. Mason's expression grew darker and uglier. "Where were you last night? You didn't come home the entire night." His interrogative tone, like I was some criminal, disgusted me. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at him. "Whether I come home or not has nothing to do with you." Just as I was about to ignore him and head back to the bedroom, Mason called out coldly, "Daisy, this is my last warning. Don't let your friends harass Iris. My patience has limits." At those words, I immediately understood what he meant. Rosie was a renowned barista. A few days ago, to vent her anger on my behalf, she had deliberately asked in front of all the cafe staff and customers for a coffee personally made by Iris. After one sip, she began critiquing everything, from the grind to the temperature to the brewing method. Iris had run out of the cafe in tears, nearly getting hit by a car. To that, I had only one comment. "Rosie was just doing her job. And she complained to you about this? She's really too fragile." I looked at Mason with a bright smile, watching as his face darkened. Then I continued, "And it's not just you, my patience also has limits. This apartment was bought by me before our marriage. It's my premarital property. At 3 this afternoon, I'll have someone come change the locks. You'd better pack up your things by then. If not, I'll have the cleaners clear everything out. And as for where your things end up, well, you really don't want to know, do you?" With that, I turned and walked back to the bedroom, slamming the door shut. By the time I came out again, Mason had already stormed off. The next day, Rosie excitedly told me that there would be a class reunion next week. Unfortunately, I had another engagement that day. But when Rosie heard the location of my event, she said the reunion was being held there as well. After she assured me repeatedly that Mason wouldn't be attending, I agreed to at least show my face. Yet the moment I pushed open the door, I came face to face with that pair of shameless lovers. Iris clung to Mason's arm, acting as if she had already claimed her place as his wife. Full of smugness. Back in college, Mason and I had been known as the perfect couple, talented man, beautiful woman. When we married right after graduation, it was big news throughout the entire school. And now, in front of our former classmates, the two of them stuck together intimately, chatting cheerfully with our old professors. But the looks on the teachers' and classmates' faces weren't pleasant. After all, my relationships with them had always been much stronger than Mason's. I had no idea where he found the audacity to bring his mistress so openly to a class reunion. The moment one of our professors saw me, he walked straight over. "Daisy, what's going on here?" "Teacher, Mason cheated. That woman he brought, that's the one." After I found out, I filed for divorce. Right now, we're still in the cooling off period. When the teachers and classmates heard my words, they all exchanged surprised glances. Even the classmates who had just been chatting with Mason and Iris suddenly turned cold. I, however, had no so-called divorce shame. Today, I was determined to nail Mason and Iris to the pillar of disgrace and let them burn there. Mason never imagined I would say it out loud so directly. His eyes bulged with rage, staring at me. I merely gave him a slight nod in return. Then I turned back to the teachers and classmates, laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. When the time felt right, I excused myself politely to the teachers, since I had another engagement to attend. But just as I stepped out the door, someone grabbed my arm from behind. Turning, I saw it was Mason. "Is the company's current trouble you're doing?" Oh, so they had already begun to move? By my calculation, the cooling-off period had lasted 29 days. Tomorrow would be the 30th, the day we could collect the divorce certificate. "What does your company have to do with me? I already sold you my shares, and all the business support has been withdrawn. And now you want to pin it on me?" Mason froze for a moment, clearly not expecting me to let go of the company so easily. "I have other matters to attend to." "Oh, and tomorrow is the last day of the cooling-off period. The day after, 10 a.m. at the Civil Affairs Bureau. See you there." With that, I turned away and headed to another private room. Compared to tangling with him, making money was far more important. The moment I pushed open the door, I heard Claude calling out, "Daisy, I saved you a seat, come sit here." He leaned close to speak softly. "Why so late? Eat something quickly." Claude and I had known each other for a long time. He had gone to the same high school as Mason and me. He was 2 grades ahead of us when Mason and I were freshmen. He was already a senior. I was always sociable, and when I heard about Claude, tall, handsome, brilliant, accepted early into Q University during his junior year, I was eager to get to know this legendary heartthrob and academic star. One day during morning exercises, a classmate behind me stepped on my shoe, and I stumbled. Claude happened to be supervising that day. He took me to the infirmary, and I took the chance to ask for his contact information. After that, whenever I saw him around school, I greeted him and chatted. Thanks to him, I later joined the student council, working in the publicity department with Claude. He was the nominal head of the department, while I, with years of drawing experience, handled the design of posters for events. We slowly grew closer during preparations for the school sports festival. He managed the overall coordination, while I worked with him frequently to confirm poster content. Conversations with Claude were always easy. We could talk endlessly, about anything and everything. So naturally, we became close. Even after he graduated and went to university, we stayed in touch. Unlike Mason, who was silent and withdrawn, always waiting for me to start the conversation. If I didn't take the initiative, Mason might not reach out for 10 days, even half a month. Mason's so-called campus heartthrob title in high school was only passed to him after Claude had graduated. The day we went to collect the divorce certificate was much like the day we had received our marriage certificate. Early autumn, warm enough, but not cold and desolate. The temperature, the sunlight, the breeze, everything was just right. The moment we stepped out of the hall, I saw Iris waiting eagerly at the entrance. As soon as she spotted us, she rushed toward Mason, as if she hoped he would walk right back in with her and apply for a marriage certificate on the spot. I, however, walked straight toward Claude, who was waiting outside for me. When Iris saw the man waiting for me, no worse than Mason, in fact even better, her heart grew increasingly unbalanced. Is that Daisy's new boyfriend? Just divorced, and already she has someone? Hearing that, I stopped, turned around, and walked right up to Iris. Without hesitation, I slapped her hard across the face. If you like being a mistress, that's your business, but don't assume everyone else is just like you. Then I turned to Mason, who looked furious, and added, keep your little bird in line. I'm not someone who shows mercy. Ignoring Mason's dark expression, I turned away, got into the car, and left. In the car, I told Claude he didn't need to hold back anymore. It was time to withdraw completely. Before, the problems Mason's company faced were just minor skirmishes, because everyone had been holding back while my divorce certificate wasn't finalized. Now that everything was settled, there was no need for restraint. In less than a month, I saw Mason's name in the news. Almost all of his company's sales staff had resigned, and business was on the verge of collapse. The new hires knew nothing, and it would take at least a month to get them up to speed. By then, it was questionable whether the company would even still exist. Half a month later, after dinner with Rosie, I returned home. From a distance, I saw a figure lingering outside my door. As the car pulled closer, I realized it was Mason. Why wasn't he off sweet-talking his precious little bird? What did he want from me? Daisy, you're back. Have you been doing well lately? The moment Mason spoke, my head began to ache. What now? Stop. 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 Call me Ms. Sue and tell me, what are you here for? Interrupted by me, Mason looked dazed for a moment. Daisy, is what happened to my company you're doing? What happened to your company has nothing to do with me. Can you stop blaming me for everything? Do you think I'm that petty? Seeing the impatience on my face, Mason seemed a little flustered. Please, just go home. Ever since I sold you my shares, I haven't touched your company. If there's a problem, don't come looking for me. I opened the door to head inside, but before I could shut it, I heard Mason say, Iris broke up with me after the company fell into trouble. She took a huge sum of money and ran. She even aborted the child. I've already reported it to the police. My hand froze on the door. And what does that have to do with me? From now on, don't tell me about matters that no longer concern me. Oh, and Mason, remember the day we ran into each other at the obstetrics clinic? Guess why I was there? Mason froze for a long moment. Then, as if realizing something, his eyes reddened as he stared at me, unable to utter a single word. I closed the door, and his final words drifted in. Is it really impossible for us? What was he thinking? Things had gone this far, and he was still dreaming of reconciliation. I wasn't a masochist. From then on, I never saw Mason again. I only kept hearing news about him from others. Mason had reported Iris to the police. When she was caught, it turned out Iris was a seasoned con artist. She was sentenced to 20 years. Mason wasn't her first victim, nor her last. He was simply the one who lost the most. The games Mason had developed were pulled from platform after platform, and the losses were incalculable. The new hires couldn't secure any new platform deals either, leaving the company to wither. Investors withdrew one after another. The company faced bankruptcy. Eventually, Mason's company declared bankruptcy, and his own whereabouts became unknown. Later, I heard from Claude that Mason had returned to our old neighborhood. With the last 200,000 yuan he had, he bought a cemetery plot. He erected a cenotaph for our child. No, that wasn't quite right. Our child was never born, so it couldn't be called a cenotaph. But I heard he visited the grave every day. He insisted it was a daughter, and the inscription on the tombstone bore a daughter's name. I heard his parents arranged countless blind dates for him. But whenever the women learned his last marriage ended because of his infidelity, things went nowhere. I heard Mason grew increasingly withdrawn, barely speaking a word. I heard his parents eventually moved away from the neighborhood for his sake. And then, gradually, there was no more news of Mason. 3 years after the divorce, I finally accepted Claude's pursuit. Epilogue. A year later, Claude and I were married. The wedding was lavish, though it was my second marriage. Claude didn't care in the slightest. Stop it, I'm remarried. And you're holding such a grand wedding. Aren't you afraid people will laugh at you? I tugged at his ear playfully, scolding him with a smile. Claude buried his head against me, rubbing his face against my stomach as he spoke. You may be remarried, but it's my first wedding. We'll celebrate it like a first. I'd like to see who dares to laugh. Before we were together, I never knew Claude had such a clingy, playful side. Back then, he was all the image of a mature, successful man. Why are you so spoiled? You weren't like this before. I sighed helplessly, though with a smile. Back then, we weren't together yet. I had to put on an act. But now that you're mine, why should I pretend? He said it with complete confidence. At the wedding, I thought I caught a glimpse of Mason. He stood in a corner, thin to the point of looking gaunt, wearing the suit I had bought for him back when we were still married. The suit that had once fit him perfectly now hung loosely. In his hands was a bouquet of flowers, so similar to the one he had held when he proposed to me. But when I looked again, there was nothing there. Perhaps I had imagined it.